This is hell. This is absolute and utter hell. I've recorded red lights on a steep mountain. Hot as, can't do a thing. In this activity, I challenged myself to go motorcycle camping to a well-known summer holiday destination, the beachside town of Mallacoota, which lies in the far northeast of the Australian state of Victoria and which is recognised as a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. I'd been motorcycle camping numerous times before, initially on my first motorbike, a Harley-Davidson Street 500, which I rode as far north as Rockhampton for a Harley rally and as far south as Tasmania for a lap around the island. I'd also taken my sport glide camping down south at Eden and up north at Mudgee. However, while I do love camping and I had a strong desire to sleep in a tent again, I did have some worries about the trip. Well, I must admit I'm a bit nervous about all this. I decided to go camping on this bike. I haven't been camping for 2 years. I haven't ever been camping on this bike. So I have to work out how to put everything on the back here. If I put this bag up here, which is pretty jolly heavy, I have to get on this way, which is tricky. Getting on is tricky. Getting off is tricky. So, I don't know. I just don't know. Because I'd moved house twice since I last went motorcycle camping, it took half a day to find all my gear and sort through what I'd need for the trip. The crazy thing about travel is that you need almost as much for one night as you do for a week or even a month. My tent, sleeping mat, pillows and sleeping bag went into the waterproof ADV Works bag that I would carry on the pillion seat. That part was easy, except for the fact that I'd need a different strap configuration to tie the heavy bag down securely. But because I'd never been camping on this particular motorbike before, it took a while to work out how best to fit everything into the BMW's panniers. On the morning of my ride, I was extremely nervous. I'd done a test ride the day before with the bike almost fully loaded and found it to be quite unstable, especially at low speeds. Okay, it's Tuesday, 18th, I think, 18th of March, and I'm just about to head out to my hand. My hand is so shaking. My hand is shaking because I'm worried about this trip. This is the first time I've carried so much on this bike. She's a bit heavily loaded. Okay, let's do it. Somehow I found the necessary courage to get on my bike and I set off a bit before 8 a.m. While I like to travel early, there are several reasons not to leave too early when riding a motorcycle. Firstly, with the sun so low in the sky, it's hard to see when travelling any direction other than due west in the early morning. Despite having a peak on my helmet and polarising sunglasses, the glare of the sun can be quite a hazard. Secondly, the likelihood of encountering a kangaroo on the road is much higher in the first few hours after dawn, even along the roads getting out of the city to the highway. There's only one road south from Canberra, the Monero Highway, which leads in almost a straight line through Breadbow, where I had to stop to put on 2 more layers of clothes because it was so unexpectedly cold. I also had some of the omelette breakfast that I brought with me and moved into the sun to eat it. The road to Cooma is quite unexciting, verging on boring, though I never see it that way as it traverses the flat Monero Plains. The region is mostly agricultural land that was cleared by early settlers nearly 200 years ago. There was a touch of fog after Breadbow, but mostly it was a brilliantly sunny day, and I relaxed into the 90-minute ride with cruise control set to the speed limit of 100 kilometres per hour. Just before Cooma, I turned left onto Polo Flat Road, which loops around the outskirts of town, then turned left again onto a road that is confusingly labelled both the Monero Highway and the Snowy Mountains Highway, because for some 46 kilometres the two roads join up into one and then separate again. My first planned stop was at Myrtle, where there is a fabulous bakery I'd been to a few times before, and where, because I was still a bit cold, I indulged in a large decaf and a magnificent chocolate eclair. From Myrtle, there's two main routes to get from the New South Wales Southern Tablelands over the Great Dividing Range to the coast, where the road that circumnavigates Australia, Highway 1, would take me down into Victoria and on to Mallacoota. The first route is to head from Myrtle on what becomes the Snowy Mountains Highway again, down Brown Mountain to Bimboka and onto the coast to meet up with Highway 1 just north of Bega. The second route is to turn right into what becomes the Monero Highway again and continues south to Bombala, then take the Mount Darragh Road, which reaches Highway 1 at South Pambula. There is, however, a third, less travelled route which heads further south from Bombala on the Monero Highway, then cuts east to the coast via Imlay Road, which meets Highway 1 about 25 kilometres south of Eden. While it's a shorter route than the other two, and while it's still a bitumen road, it's basically a logging track that links all the surrounding plantation forestry areas, and the road can be a bit chewed up at times. However, this is the route south favoured by motorcyclists, and although I took it rather more slowly than my faster motorbike buddies usually cover it, the road was almost deserted. It was a stunning day, and I had a blissful ride. At the end of Imlay Road, I turned right onto Highway 1 and headed south into Victoria for 40 kilometres to Genoa, which is opposite the turn-off to Mallacoota. By the time I got to this point, with the exception of a short stop at Bombala for petrol, I'd been on the bike for over 2 hours and hadn't had any food since morning tea at Myrtle. My body was starting to protest. I was tired and hungry, and I was in excruciating pain from the hard seat of the BMW. Too keen to get to where I was camping for the night, I decided not to stop at Genoa and turned left onto the road east to Mallacoota, which became more and more narrow and winding with every one of its painful 25 kilometres. About a fifth of the central part of the seaside town of Mallacoota appears to be dedicated to caravan parks, with a major one owned and operated by the Victorian government. After finally finding a place to park and having a quick snack of cheese and salami, I headed into the park registration office and paid for an unpowered site, which was administered fairly efficiently, then went in search of my allotted campsite. The camping area was the largest I've ever seen in Australia, and while fortunately it was only about 1/3 occupied, that was still a lot of people, most of whom were grey nomads. Fortunately, my campsite was covered in the most luxurious thick grass, which made setting up my tent a pleasure, though I did select a site as far away as possible from the large tree, as eucalypts are totally capable of dropping a branch at any time, even in a totally still night. After a couple of muesli bars, I took a look around. I like to carry most of my food when I travel by motorbike, and this trip wasn't any different. I usually have a salad for dinner, and I prepared this in the small camp kitchen, then ate it sitting by my tent. I slept really well and woke at dawn to catch some drone shots of the sunrise. then had a leisurely bowl of yogurt and nuts before packing the bike for the trip home. I decided to take a different route home, although it would still be about the same distance of 360 kilometres. After heading out from Mallacoota, I would turn right on Highway 1 and ride north as far as Canberra, then ride west on Mount Darragh Road as far as Myrtle Mountain Road, where I would turn right and head up to Canberra. From there I would take Magilla Road until it joined the Snowy Mountains Highway just east of Bemboka, then ride up Brown Mountain to Myrtle, and after that Cooma, and from there on home. By the time I got to Canberra, I was in need of both petrol and a solid brunch, something with eggs, because the muesli and nuts that I'd had before packing had long been digested. The petrol station attendant kindly let me leave shadow there, which was handy given the main street of Canberra is quite steep and thus not easy to park a bike on. I then found a fabulous cafe called Toast and ate out in the back balcony. While the meal was wonderful, I only ate half of it, taking the rest with me for lunch later on. Backtracking slightly, I took the Mount Darragh Road for 30 kilometres until the turn-off to Myrtle Mountain Road. I'd been along this road twice before, once as a pillion passenger on a friend's big Harley and once on my own Harley Sport Glide, and it is on my top 10 list of best roads to ride in Australia. On that sunny Wednesday morning it didn't disappoint, and with the exception of a long mob of riders coming in the other direction, I had the road to myself for 22 fabulous kilometres until I got to Canberra. Australia is filled with wonderful small rural town cafés, and Canberra is no exception. Despite having had a second breakfast in Canberra, I was ready for a big morning tea. Again, the road from Canberra to Bemboka was almost deserted, which made for another great ride, and I kept going on up towards Brown Mountain, which I'd ridden down about a year ago. Unfortunately, a slip on the side of the mountain that had happened a few years previously still hadn't been fixed, with the single lane around the roadworks requiring traffic control. When I saw the roadworks warning sign, I prayed that the light would be green when I got there, but it was red and I was forced to stop. For big, strong riders, stopping on a steep slope isn't much of a problem, as they can balance the whole weight of the bike on their left foot while keeping their right foot on the rear brake, leaving their right hand free to manage the throttle. However, because I'm so short and riding a heavy bike, I need to keep both feet firmly on the ground when I'm stopped, especially on a steep slope. When it's time to move off again, I need to finesse, letting off the front brake with my right fingers while also rolling the throttle forward with my right hand, plus let out the clutch with my left hand. With a massive truck right behind me, I was under loads of pressure. After a tense few minutes, the lights finally turned green, but by the time I coordinated moving off, the lights had changed back to red again, though I wasn't about to stop. I'm slow at cornering on twisty mountain roads, so it was no surprise that the truck stayed tight behind me to the top, and as soon as I got the opportunity, I waved him on so I could enjoy the ride without feeling hassled. I rode on through Myrtle without stopping. Then, tired, hungry and needing a bio break, I headed into Cooma and stopped at the public park in the centre of town, where I had the second half of my breakfast for a very late lunch. The 90-minute ride home from Cooma was thankfully uneventful, with the exception of passing a bushfire just south of Myrtle, the smoke of which always unnerves me. Being a highly emotional person, my mind is quite capable of leading me either in a joyful upward or devastating downward spiral. Over the past 2 decades of dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, I've found that one of the ways of minimising the down dips is to commit to activities that require me to be strong in both mind and body. Motorcycle riding is very much one of these activities. As I discovered early on my first trip motor camping to Tasmania, it's a bad idea to cry when wearing a helmet, because dealing with the mess of tears and a runny nose is impossible without stopping, and often that's just not possible on a narrow, winding road. Be strong became my mantra a long time ago, and I repeatedly summon it when riding a motorcycle. While motorbike riding can be very stressful, the regular moments of exhilaration during a journey like this and the overall sense of achievement after an expedition are more than worth it. I roved home utterly exhausted, but the knowledge of what I'd just done was much more than fair compensation and will last a lot longer than my few nervous Nelly moments. Oh my God, I am so exhausted. I am so tired. I am so unbelievably tired. Hot. This is 32, 33. (32, 33 degrees. I am so hot. I am so tired. But woohoo! I did it! Woohoo! The direct costs of my camping trip to Mallacoota included petrol, which came in at $55.84 for a total of 720 kilometres. My unpowered campsite was $37 a night. In addition to the food I carried with me from home, food that I purchased cost $11.90 for the luscious morning tea at the bakery in Myrtle, $29.15 for breakfast at Toast in Pambula, half of which I ate later for lunch in Cooma, and $12.68 for another wonderful morning tea at the general store cafe in Canberra. My annual motorcycle expenses include $752.20 for ACT registration, $480 for insurance, and about $450 for each 10,000 kilometre service. I have ridden almost 20,000 kilometres on the bike's original tyres, which I will soon replace with Michelin Anarchy Adventure treads, which will cost about $700. Join me for my next episode when I go to a series of 5 pottery classes and learn just how hard it is to make a beautiful ceramic bowl. For more information about living your own unlived life, if you go to my website, you can download a copy of my free book, Living Your Unlived Life, Finding Contentment by Honouring Your Dreams. And if it's your thing, you could like this video and subscribe to my channel.